projects as a committee and prioritize them. And so at this point, we find out where we are at with funding sources to fund some of these projects and carry them forward and make a recommendation to finance that they include those in the 2022 budget prep. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our finance director, Mary Ann Grote, and she can walk us through where we're at with funding and which projects have risen to the top.
Yep, so in your packet was the original 2022 request summary, as well as the request ranked by the committee. You can see that the hangar door replacement was received the highest ranking, followed by the financial software and the fleet facility year one, which is, I believe, engineering and architectural services, followed by bus replacement, and then those are the top four. One of the questions that I had was for Greg on the bus replacement. Now, I know we have ARPA funds as well as the city's levy carryover. Is any of that available to help with the city's share of funding?
Reserve funds could certainly be used for the local share, but just as a reminder, it is anticipated that this be a VW fund procurement.
Okay.
So it's funded through reduction of
Shared
shared revenue
revenue.
off over 10 years.
Okay.
So it's about $28,000 a year reduction.
So this local share really is not a fiscal impact for 2020?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
All
Yeah,
right.
the same thing happened, 2 years
Yep.
ago? And we pulled it out.
Okay.
But-
And really, we haven't seen a reduction in our shared revenues at this point because we've not even gotten buses.
Correct.
Okay.
So I anticipate, I'm not sure if next year or it would be probably 2023, we'd start to see the first reduction.
Okay.
So,
All right.
and if we craft the reserves anticipating that, you could probably fund the entire thing out of reserves,
Okay.
so.
All right. Cool. So if we moved that out, typically we reserve our CIP debt issue for our infrastructure projects, which aren't ranked by the committee. I think going into this year, we recognized that we were going to have a couple of financial challenges because of that fleet facility. If you recall, when we funded the fire station, typically we have borrowed for 20 years for our facilities, and so we wrapped the entire package of the fire station in that 20-year issue. So we could look at that and take that, I guess, and set it aside. Obviously, this financial software is a huge commitment to the city, and I think that, we're going to have to look at some creative funding opportunities for that project as well. So, typically we've been able to rank about 560,000 of projects. So if we take those three major projects out, we can see kind of where we are. I had is John here today? No. I know that he was not real confident of how fast that terminal building would actually take place. So I don't know, that might be something that we want to consider too.
Okay, so with that,
And I think,
if we were to roll the borrowing for the fleet facility in with the debt issue for the construction, does that mean then essentially that we would recommend that the facility be funded, we would cover that 1.15 million upfront and then reimburse ourselves with the debt issue?
right, or time it, yep.
Or time
it
the debt
towards
issue.
the end of the year when we were getting close to,
Sure, and that debt repayment would likely begin maybe in 24?
right,
2024. So the facility could still move forward, but you would not have to earmark borrowing for this year.
right.
Okay, I think that's important to recognize. And with the financial software, is it, because the implementation on that is going to be really, really long. So is it possible for us to commit to the project and then split that debt issue over 2 years?
Yeah, I think the new cost is.
Or the funding
is
over 2
Jerry here?
years.
Yeah, I don't have the costs with me. Do you have them with you? Oh, maybe I wrote them. So we've got revised costs. Actually, we, based on the contract, it looks like our share of the cost for 2022 would be 928,000, just 929,000
Okay.
in 2022 and 164 in 2023. So, right.
Right. And so we had been, and so the thought is that once this committee, assuming this committee ranked this high enough, we are having a finance committee meeting and a council meeting tomorrow. And our request is to ask the finance committee to, in advance, because of the way these contracts are let, to place an earmark in the 2022 budget right away for our portion of that software expense so that the project can take flight, because it's expected that county will approve or has approved their half. And we then would need to have our commitment lined up for our half. So that likely will come tomorrow. So then if we're going to look at, so we're looking for us to pick about 500,000 of other things from this list.
Right.
To fund.
Right, and I think then if the committee ranked where they thought we should try to fit these projects into the 2021 budget, then it could become the task of the finance committee to try to figure out how to actually financially accomplish that.
Well, and so the terminal building upgrades may also require some time for design, right?
Yeah,
And implementation.
that was my
So
understanding.
I guess I'm curious how much of the 677 he would need now. Because we could, with $500,000, we could get quite a ways down this list if we've got other mechanisms for the other things, which normally isn't. I mean, we had one year where the red line where we ran out of money was right below item number 1. And there just was no more. We've had to cut streets to fund CIP before. And so, if we're not in that predicament this year, we can get an awful lot of work done for 500,000. Okay, and so were you able to reach John?
I'm trying to reach him right now.
Okay. Yeah, come on up, Jerry.
You mentioned other sources. I just wanted to mention something. I don't know what your take on this is, but we haven't received the final rules from the feds on what we can spend ARPA money on yet. But from everything I've read, if you look at your list, the 6 CCITC, or the 6 IT projects, the last 3, the 4th, 5th, and 6th one, I am reasonably sure, although I haven't seen the final rule yet, I'm reasonably sure we're going to be able to submit those if we want as ARPA funding. So that's the core switch replacement, the internet firewall replacement.
Yep.
The core switch replacement, the next one, and then the council room upgrades. There's a fair amount of language in the draft language that we've been seeing from the feds that you're going to be able to submit stuff related to cybersecurity and, things that allow people to work from home, WebEx. So I think the council chambers would fall into that bucket. And then the first two are a combination of those and cybersecurity issues. So the firewall and core switch. So I don't know where you're at on ARPA funding.
I have some concerns about using ARPA funds for meeting room upgrades here, just because I think we're looking for things that have a public-facing benefit. So
Fair
I
enough.
think
I just want to mention that.
Yeah, I think that's a discussion that we should have in a broader sense, because I think the community is expecting us to use those funds to benefit the community, and it's a very indirect benefit, for us to have a better meeting room versus something that they would, perhaps appreciate more.
What about the other two? What are your thoughts on those two?
Those two are
cybersecurity
critical,
related issues.
Yes, I don't see the same issue with that, but
Okay.
In my mind, I just feel like out in the community, using those funds for a benefit to the council
I
will
totally
play
understand.
like a pay raise for the
It looks like
council.
it looks like it could be done, is all I'm saying.
Okay.
But-
So I
and
think
then-
that's,
So those three, I just wanted to point out,
Yeah.
that could be brought to other discussions about
right.
ARPA funding.
And there's so many other uses for ARPA as well. I mean, we still, we've
Yeah.
got
Every time I've seen anything that says cybersecurity is going to be included in the final draft. so
Yeah, cybersecurity,
Pretty
I think,
confident that's going to be in
cybersecurity,
there.
I think people can agree with, but meeting room upgrades, I think they'd be pretty
Yeah.
unhappy with.
And I only brought it up because there was some language in there that said basically the same way they did the CARES fund, that allowed
Mm-hmm.
people to separate related to pandemic-related issues. That's why.
Yep, no,
Thanks.
thank you for that, though,
John says he is hopeful.
that he could launch that in 2022. The
Yes.
upgrades? Would he need all of the funding at one time, or can he
I don't
split?
know, he's writing me
Oh,
something
okay.
right now.
Because, yeah, if he could split between 22 and 23, you know, even on the, because they're facility upgrades, I imagine those would be funded by debt versus,
Yeah, well, we're gonna have to manage the affordability of the debt too, but.
well, that's true. I mean, we certainly don't want to send forward a recommendation that we, you know, borrow way more than
Right.
we've been consistently. I mean, historically, we normally borrow, what, about 2.5 million-ish?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Oh, he's saying the infrastructure bill that's being,
Considered today.
And
Yeah.
Yep, that could really help the airport potentially.
Yeah.
So that might be a funding source, an additional funding source for his
I know he
building.
mentioned that even for runway stuff and
Yeah.
that. So that's something maybe to keep an eye on then, maybe to put a pin in that and see where that infrastructure bill lands. And, you know, it sounds like it's going very positively, and if that's the case, then maybe that's something we could revisit.
Sure.
You know? I mean, it sounds like if it's going to pass, it's going to pass this month. You know, and
Okay.
then it's just a matter of knowing how much we get from that. Okay, so then I guess if we kind of add these up a little bit, we have an alternate source for the bus funding, and it's only 28,000 in shared revenue a year or two from, well, almost 2 years from now. So then we've got, let's just assume that we hold off the airport terminal for right now. Does that get us about to the scoreboard at Athletic Park?
I think so.
Or if I'm doing some quick no calculator math here that, I'll leave it to you for the reliability of the figures.
I think if we take the switches out, then that gets us to the scoreboard. If the switches are in, then we're just
So if-
short of the scoreboard.
Right, so if we take the firewall and the switches and we mark them for alternate funding from ARPA,
And also, the fleet software, year one, is that cartograph then? Okay, so then, so what we've done, because today the fleet management is Kayenta, we've basically rolled in,
so their software really.
is rolled into the
Workday?
financial software, yes.
Okay, so there's no
that-
separate money needed for that then?
Right.
Excellent. That
So that would
saves us
remove
some
that
bucks and it
too.
gets them what they need. So, okay, so that takes 75,000 off as well.
Yeah.
Okay. And, okay, and then we mark the other two for ARPA.
The core switch, what's the data center refresh? I forgot what that is.
Come on up, Jerry, and so they can hear you on the video. Refresh our memory on the
Yeah.
data center refresh.
Quick show and mark that. The data center refresh, I don't have it completely memorized, but that's replacing the servers that we have here. So
Oh, okay.
we've
Okay.
been moving to more and more cloud solutions. So, like the Kayenta is on our own servers right now. The Workday project is a cloud solution, but we still have, between the city and the county, we still have 325 servers.
Okay,
And that stuff hasn't been refreshed in, I don't remember, almost 5 years. It's been a while. So yours is only 70% of that. So it's a 70-30 split between the county and the city.
sure. Okay,
Same thing, by the way, with the, I wanted to quick mention that on the financial, when you see that this afternoon, or sorry, tomorrow afternoon, we're doing a 70-30. So county is expected to pay 70% of the project
pay
cost.
30?
And you're at 30 right now. That's what
that
we're doing.
is fantastic.
And that's the way we did the law enforcement one, so we're doing we're just using the same methodology.
Okay, that is fantastic. I think the committee will definitely appreciate that as well.
Yeah, in fact, Mary Ann, that reminds me, so Mary Ann and I were just working on trying to review the numbers and stuff. Do you, I don't know, maybe it makes sense to us to show the total amount when we get to those, to get to that, and then your portion of it? I don't know if that'll help.
Oh, yeah.
For tomorrow's meeting, you mean?
Yeah, for
I
tomorrow's
think
meeting.
definitely, because they're all coming into this brand new
Yeah.
and haven't been, I mean, they know we need a
would-
system from last year's,
It'd get us ahead of someone saying, well, what's the county paying?
right,
So,
right.
Okay.
And
and
they're-
Mary Ann's got all that stuff. We just worked on it this morning.
right, and she's already presenting the same presentation she gave us about the need and the
Yeah.
Yeah, this is going to have
functionality
dollar
and-
amounts in it at both the
Yeah.
5:15 meeting and the 7.
Yep,
Six,
and I had
sorry.
a memo in your packet, in your finance packet, too.
Right, yes. So that will help them a lot, because then they kind of get up to speed quickly.
Right.
So,
So if we removed what we were talking about, the bus replacement.
Yep.
The fleet management software, the core switch, the
Firewall.
internet firewall, we would be at about 550,000 if we got down to the tennis court replacement, through the tennis court replacement. And that assumes that the FBO building is being funded through ARPA.
through infrastructure,
Yes.
infrastructure bill. Okay. We certainly can revisit if we find out that that bill did not pass.
Right.
But it certainly looked, it had positive signaling yesterday even, so, okay. Okay, so what are your thoughts, committee? Because that would get us to accomplish everything on the list up through the tennis court replacement. That only leaves 4 items. Council, in the 4 that would be left is council room upgrades, Sylvan Hill parking lot, the renovation at the skate park, and the back steps at City Hall. Everything else we'd be able to accomplish, and we would not cut streets.
I have a question on the
Go ahead,
data
Carrie.
center refresh.
Sure.
If the technology we have right now, I'm not a computer person, so this may sound not very smart, but if we are needing to be on our own servers right now and the new software is in the cloud, why would we need to refresh? Wouldn't that
It's
cost
for,
less?
it's for all of the other servers that we support. That, I think I have it in the pack, is it in, do you have it in your packet?
I don't have my big packet.
Is
Okay.
it the stuff that's not
You
cloud
still
hosted? Is
have-
that what you're talking
You
about?
still have, I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but close to 100 servers. I think that you guys are on for all kinds of other systems.
Okay.
So we'll keep
So it's
reducing
not
that
that you're
because we keep,
refreshing to cause more space, it's refreshing to refresh?
we're refreshing because the servers are at end of support life within the next
Okay.
24
I
months.
thought they were like
So
out of room, but they're end of support.
We're always buying storage, to be honest with you.
Okay.
And we've been, lately, what we've been doing is buying a combination of on-site storage that's a temporary holding place, and then we've been moving more and more to the cloud. So, for example, Matt's cameras, his body cams are already all stored out in the cloud. They come through our server, so they need a temporary space, and then they get moved up to cloud storage.
Okay.
And then what we've been doing with our backup environment is continuing to move that to more and more to cloud solutions. But sometimes when you look at some of the stuff, if it's a server that gets used a lot, that's not very cost effective to put into the cloud. If it's a server that's used infrequently, it is cost effective to buy storage in the cloud. So our network manager does a great job. He's always analyzing. Okay,
Like who uses
this server
what?
makes sense to move here. This one doesn't. Because what happens when you put stuff in Amazon or either the Google or Microsoft clouds or Amazon, any of those 3, what they do is they charge you for the space, and then they charge you for access to the data. So they keep track of how many times did you open a file and close a file and pull it down and bring it down. And so stuff that's less frequently used is usually fiscally, the math works on doing the analysis on it. So we're always doing lately what we've been doing is a combination of both
Okay.
for storage. But then at the end of the day, we still have some servers we have to run here. And that's what we're refreshing with that
Okay.
one.
Is it safe to assume that over time, as this technology continues to expand and improve, that our need for server housing should just be less in general?
It'll just keep going down.
There'll be fewer and fewer?
Yeah, we'll probably end up with a pretty small amount that we end up here, we were already probably, so one of the things we originally did was, the servers used to always buy what they call pizza boxes. You'd put a server in, it had hard drives in it, basically it was a PC.
Yep.
Fit in a shelf. And then you went to more and more sophisticated ones where you could share, you put in these really expensive storage units and then expensive processors and memory, and that was the kind of the standard for a while. And then the new standard is then you went from that to virtualizing all your servers so you could more efficiently move them around. And now what you're seeing is what I'm just talking about is you're keeping some processing here, which is usually temporary holds.
Yep.
And then you're putting stuff up in what people are doing is they're putting stuff in storage based on how often they use it and how big it is.
Yeah.
And so you end up with this environment where you're kind of tiering storage.
Sure.
On, this is really cheap storage that's slower and gets used the least. And there's kind of medium storage that's in the middle, and then the most expensive storage is stuff that you're using often.
All the time, yeah.
And
Okay.
so we put in these big server racks, storage racks that are this tall, and they do all that stuff for us now.
Good.
They keep track of it, and they move it from there's three physical storage types in it.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually move it around for us automatically if we wanted to, when we
That's
wanted
good.
to do.
That is good. And I think that,
Yeah.
it's important to know that from a capital standpoint, if we can expect that that need will be less and less over time.
The disadvantage, just to be clear, is as you move to more and more cloud solutions, your operating costs, your capital costs are going down, but your operating costs are going up. So Kayenta, our current financial system, we spend about $270,000 a year for that between the city and the county. This is going to be $700,000 to go to Workday. Much
Right.
more sophisticated solution, fixes all kinds of other problems, but it's storage in the cloud, and it's
Renting virtual real estate.
it's called SaaS storage,
Yeah.
or depending on what term you want to use, but it's your renting software.
Well, and I think as you had mentioned before too, it's much easier then to manage upgrades and updates as well.
Yeah,
because
well,
it's-
Workday in
you
particular is
always
really
have the
slick.
newest
What it does
version.
is it has one code base on it, and they upgrade it twice a year, and all of their customers.
And you just get it.
You just
So-
get it, yeah. So what happens, the challenge on us is, and Mary Ann's team and Tony's team is, they'll say, hey, we're going to upgrade on April 30th. You have 2 months, we're going to put it in your test environment. You better test everything, because on April 30th, we're
'Cause
going
it's
live for 50 million people. You're getting it.
Okay,
It's the same thing with, what Microsoft's doing with Office 365 and
Sure.
those types of solutions.
yep,
So it's more operating costs, though, and less capital costs,
right.
which, is not the best thing, not always the best thing. It's actually easier for me sometimes to ask you guys for capital than it is for me to ask you to increase our salaries,
Yeah,
right?
so, well, but it's certainly understandable if that's the trend that's emerging with all of it.
It's
So-
the unavoidable trend.
Right.
They just price everything
Right.
to make it so that's the only option you
Well,
have
and I
to
think our
choose.
mindset about funding is evolving with it, so, I mean, I think if someone had told us 20 years ago that we'd be paying 1.8 million for our share of a software package, we would have fallen over, so.
Yeah.
It's all relative. But does anyone else have questions for
Does that
Jerry?
answer your question? Sorry.
Okay,
Okay.
okay, perfect. All right, so that gets us to, well, that would, then if we make a recommendation to fund it as we've discussed here, that would get us all the way down to the tennis courts. Does anyone have any thoughts on those recommendations or on the 4 projects that would be left? This may be the furthest that we've been able to get down our CIP list for as long as I've been here. I honestly don't remember ever getting to within 4 positions of the bottom of the list and not cutting any streets.
So can somebody refresh my memory on the athletic park scoreboard replacement, like why that needs to happen right now?
Sure. Do you want to come up, Jamie, and talk about that? We can bring up the Parks Director. We have a development agreement with Mr. McDonald at the athletic park. He's invested private sector funding into the park that they don't own. And I think part of that means that the scoreboard, we have part of that to pay for, but not all. Is that where we left off?
Correct, yes. The developers agreement does have that we would include in our CIP $50,000 for our 2022 CIP for a portion of the video scoreboard. He wants to upgrade their current scoreboard that we do have quite a bit of problems with now to a video scoreboard. So the city is just giving the $50,000, and then he is paying anything above and beyond. So the $50,000 basically covers the basic scoreboard like we have out there, and then he's paying the upgrades to get it to a video scoreboard, but that's our portion of it.
So we have to do it already because it's already agreed to, or that's
It's in
what
the
he
developer's
wants?
agreement.
Okay,
Yep.
so it's really not, we don't have a choice. Is
No,
what
and that would
it's-
probably be something based on the timing of their portion of the project. We would have had to have moved back up over the line. Because
Okay.
once we draw the line for revenue, we can make adjustments if there's priorities that
Okay.
have urgent need. And this would have been one that we'd have probably had to have moved up over the line, above the line for immediate funding if we hadn't scored it high enough or if we didn't have enough funding.
Got it.
But for that, video scoreboard, I think just for the public that's watching our meetings, are we expecting that the finished product on that will look something like what we have or what the school district has out at Tom Field?
I don't know exactly what the school
Okay.
district has at Tom Field, but if it if it has a big screen on it and can show graphics
Graphics,
and videos,
advertising, replay?
then yes, it's the same.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that's impressive. It would be, or really, it would really heighten the fan experience at the ballpark, I think.
Yeah, and I think what Mr. McDonald's plan is that we take, the first part of it is to replace the scoreboard that's out there, and then they'll be adding on the video scoreboard piece after. So the video scoreboard may not go up for the next season, but it probably will go up for the following season based on the basic package that's out there and the rebuilding of the electrical and the foundation that it needs to go on.
Sure. It would sit in the same position at the park? Off the first
The
baseline?
scoreboard will be on the same position as the current one, and the video scoreboard will either go above that or it will go to the side of that, and it all
Okay.
depends on the footings that we have out there and what's available.
Sure. Anybody else have questions for Jamie at all on park projects? So we're getting a couple off your list done too, so.
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. All right, anybody have any other questions on the funding plan? Are we all good with this funding plan, where we're coming out? It's great to have alternate funding sources and the ability, the luxury of time where we can spread stuff out. That helps us a whole lot to get through our work list.
And then we'll try to bring this to finance in September.
Probably that first
For
meeting.
either the first or second meeting, depending on
Sure.
how we're going, to go over some financing options, and we can always reconvene this committee if we run into problems
That,
along
and
the
if
way.
we find out that the infrastructure stuff won't help at the airport, maybe we
Right.
need to realign a little
Yeah.
bit. We could certainly call another session.
Yep.
Okay, so do we have a motion then to forward to the Finance Committee a recommendation to fund the 2022 CIP plan the way we've discussed here, which, to summarize, will contemplate ARPA funding for the internet firewall and the core switch. It will contemplate a $929,000 earmark for the financial system replacement. It'll cover the hangar door at the airport. It'll cover at least $28,000 of the bus replacement through shared revenue in a future year. It would get the fire equipment taken care of with the CPR devices and the patient movement materials. It will take care of the fleet management software as a component of the financial package. It will take care of the data center refresh. We're expecting infrastructure funding on the terminal upgrades at the airport, so we're holding that aside. The drinking fountains at parks, the fencing at the police department, technology projects at transit, Cisco switch replacements in IT, the DPW office remodel, the athletic park scoreboard replacement, and the tennis court replacement for the first year. And then no cuts to infrastructure or street repair or reconstruction. Do we have a motion to fund that plan that way? We have a motion by Martins. Is there a second? Oops. Go back to my stuff here. Okay, second, motion by Martin, second by Marl. Is there any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None are opposed. That motion carries. So that recommendation then will go forward to the Finance Committee. We'll reconvene if we need to make any adjustments. And you'll apprise the other members of what was chosen and send them a final list?
Yep.
Perfect. And then Finance will meet tomorrow night about an earmark for that financial software. And the budget process in earnest in the Finance Committee kicks off in October with a series of 3 or 4 workshops, all of which are televised, and we invite the other council members to attend those as well if they have issues on behalf of their neighborhoods. So with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Motion from Martins, is there a second? Second by Marl. Members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No one ever is. We'll stand adjourned then. Thanks, everybody.